What's up, guys? In today's video, we're going to be covering the pros and cons of both Etsy and the Shopify e-commerce business model. I personally have grown a 7-figure-a-year Etsy brand, and I have also grown a multiple 6-figure Shopify brand. Well, they were the same brand, but just running on 2 different sales channels. And I'm going to explain in this video not only the pros and cons, we're also going to go over the key differences, and also we're going to go over my approach or my strategy to being successful on both. One thing that I want you to keep in mind, I cannot preference this video enough. When it comes to selecting, if you're starting for the first time, Etsy versus Shopify, or doing both at the same time, or whatever the case may be, there is no wrong answer. It's really just understanding both business engines, because technically they are 2 different engines that require 2 completely different strategies. And so what it comes down to on what you decide for your own business is really understanding how each engine works and deciding what works best for you. And I'm going to give you again my approach to either or which one you should tackle first or second, contingent on what type of entrepreneur or CEO you plan on being, right? Because it's not like one size fits all. My approach may be a completely different approach than your approach. I just said approach like 6 times, but maybe completely different because you're just a different type of entrepreneur, and that's okay. Like I said, there's no wrong answer. It's just understanding the capabilities and what is the right fit for you. So yeah, that's what we're getting into. So let's get into it. All right, first off, let's start with the Shopify business engine. So Shopify, if you clicked on this video, hopefully you know what Shopify is. If you don't, Shopify is an e-commerce website builder. I personally think it is the best builder of an e-commerce store compared to anything else. If you want to sell physical things online or digital goods online, they make it easy. If Shopify is an iPhone, they have an app store that you literally, if anything that you could ever think of that you need for your Shopify store, it will have it. But not only that, Shopify is just the way that they deal with customer service and fulfillment and shipping and building your website. It's just so easy. At the end of this video, if you're interested in trying out Shopify, I have a link in my description for a free trial. All right, so what are the pros with Shopify? Shopify is really just, again, the website builder, but Shopify is the tool that helps you create your e-commerce website. So if you want to have bracelets.com, right? You own that URL, you purchase that URL, and you build a website with Shopify as a tool. Shopify also has all the supporting assets or supporting tools that you're going to need to run your business, like fulfilling your orders, building your website, having checkout forms, payment processors. It's like an all-in-one business platform, right? In one place. And the pros with owning your own website and driving traffic to your own website is you own all of your sales data. So this is unlike Etsy, where Etsy, you're selling under somebody else's name. People are going to Etsy.com as a marketplace to go find a product that they're searching for, right? Shopify is not that. Shopify is your own website, meaning that in order for people to find you, you need to be driving traffic from somewhere, which we'll talk about later. But the pro with that is that when you sell on a third-party platform like Etsy, Etsy technically doesn't want you to have your customer information, like an email address or a phone number or something like that, because they want to own your customer data. When you own your own website, you actually own your own data, so you can retarget them a lot easier, and you also just have overall more control over your destiny in a sense, because you're not playing by the rules of somebody else, if that makes sense. Full transparency here. Even though you technically own your own sales data, you are the owner of your website, all of these things, you can control where most of your traffic is coming from. But a case scenario here where technically you're still abiding by somebody else's algorithm is, say you are getting the majority of your traffic from TikTok videos, and then all of a sudden the TikTok algorithm changes and it just kills your exposure on TikTok, right? So in a sense, even though you still own your own sales data, you still are playing by the rules of wherever you're getting your traffic from, whether it's Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or maybe on Google Ads, right? And all of those platforms, they have all their own algorithms, which there is a set of rules for all of those different platforms to get traffic from. But with that being said, it's still more control of your destiny than, let's say, something like Etsy, where your only option is to abide by one set of rules, that is Etsy. So who is a good fit for going straight to Shopify, say, versus Etsy? Nowadays in the e-commerce world, if you're not third-party selling on Amazon or Etsy, and again, you own your own website, the result of that is usually that you have to drive traffic. So there's really two options for getting traffic. You can try to go the cheapest route possible and try to make a bunch of organic content, potentially viral content on behalf of your products on Instagram and TikTok or maybe YouTube, and then drive traffic from those social platforms to your products. And there's so many different ways that you can do it nowadays. And it takes one viral video to really just change the name of the game for your store, right? One video that gets a couple million views, literally it's just game over. Your store is gonna instantly probably be a success unless your products just aren't good. Now, with that being said, if you're just going the straight organic content route, it's a dime in a dozen. It's just like me sitting here making YouTube videos. I'm gonna put equal effort in research and SEO and put all the love into every single video, thousands of hours into my content, but maybe 1 out of 100, takes off and does really, really well, right? So it's the same type of concept. But if you're somebody that, looks at competitors' content and, gets that gut feeling that says, I can do that, then it's probably likely that you could make pretty viral videos on behalf of your product. And one good place that we even do for our own products is, you can go into TikTok and start getting targeted by your competition and look at what videos of theirs is going viral. What are they doing in those videos? What sounds are they using? What angles, what lighting do they have, right? What are the products that they're actually offering, right? And can we compete with that type of content? Or another thing that we do is we just look at videos that go viral, right? And even though we might not be selling the same thing, or maybe that video wasn't even selling anything at all, but it went viral because the sound that they were using or something like that, then we would try to implement that into our own product line and try to make that type of media on behalf of our products to try to go viral. So making content isn't just like a random thing. It's definitely, there's a lot of research that goes into it. Same with YouTube videos, right? So the same SEO and the strategies I do with my YouTube content, it's kind of similar to the content that we make on behalf of our products on TikTok and Instagram. Now, the second option for driving traffic really to a website that has products is by doing something called media buying. That is where you're paying Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or YouTube to run ads to your products. Nowadays, what we're seeing, the ads that perform really well is video content. So you're really not getting out of making content, but that's not always true for every niche, because some niches actually perform really well with static imagery ads. So you don't actually have to make videos if your product is a good fit, but that's not always the case. And running ads for a Shopify store can be wildly profitable if you crack the code. The cost per acquisition is definitely more expensive than Etsy, unless you're just a dime in the dozen and have a viral product that just went viral out the gates. The cost per acquisition to acquire a customer from Meta ads or YouTube ads usually historically is going to be more expensive than say on Amazon or Etsy, right? In this case, because people are going to Etsy.com with their wallet open, knowing that they're wanting to purchase something. People aren't going to TikTok and Instagram scrolling looking for something to buy. So the traffic that exists on social media is a lot colder than the traffic that exists on a third-party selling platform or a marketplace where people are searching to buy goods. But with that being said, the potential to reach more people does exist on, say, Instagram or TikTok, right? On Etsy, you're capped based off the amount of people that are actually searching on the platform. So even though it's way hotter traffic, right, there's only so many people seeking Etsy as their marketplace for your specific product. Whereas on, Instagram ads and Google ads and stuff like that, right, you really have no limitations, right? You could reach infinite amount of people and you could scale a lot higher, but your cost per acquisition, especially in the first few years, is going to be a lot more expensive. Shopify is also a lot more capital intensive, unless the exception, because there's always an exception, unless you're just that viral TikToker or Instagrammer that just made a viral video, then your traffic was free because, you had an organic video take off, which has that potential there. Hopefully right now you're kind of understanding that the Shopify landscape, but now let's move into the Etsy landscape. I like to call Etsy e-com for beginners because Etsy is probably the lowest barrier to to entry, the easiest way to start in e-commerce like ever. I have sold on every platform, pretty much, all platforms. I did Amazon FBA, I'm obviously Shopify, Etsy, eBay, Faire, also now Wayfair. We're getting our home decor line on Wayfair as well, which is just a technical nightmare, but we're still exploring that. But when it comes to what is the easiest platform, if you're a completely new beginner, I like to tell people that are not super tech savvy or aren't viral TikTokers, right? Etsy is probably going to be the best option for you just because of the ease of the interface. And, it's like your first stomping grounds for ecom 101, right? It gets you used to having transactions happening, getting money in exchange for something else that you give them. Like there's a whole learning process that just happens when you get comfortable with accepting money to give them something back, right? That is like a whole experience that you have as an entrepreneur for the first time when you first start making money, right? Dealing with customer service, fulfilling your orders, getting your packaging right, getting your offerings right. Etsy is a really good place to get the ball rolling and learn a lot about not only yourself as an e-commerce entrepreneur, but also about this business that you're building, right? And a lot of the skills that you acquire in Etsy translate later on to Shopify, especially when it comes to marketing and figuring out your product offerings. Another big thing that makes Etsy such a low barrier of entry is kind of like what we mentioned before. It is a lot cheaper, right? The cost per acquisition on Etsy, when I say cost per acquisition, by the way, it's the cost associated with acquiring a customer. So when you're spending money on marketing, there's a cost associated with acquiring that person, getting that person to your store, unless you're just depending on free organic traffic from Etsy, which is what some people do, but I do not recommend. And I suggest you cue my Etsy ads playlist and the importance of that if you are gonna go with Etsy. But with that being said, historically, Etsy is cheaper than any other platform. And the only exception to that is if you have some traffic source that is organic and free. Now you can get some organic free traffic on Etsy, which is great. And that is also why you have to pay a 6.5% selling fee, which is what Etsy is gonna charge you per sale every time you make a sale, because that is what their payment for basically bringing you free traffic. So if you get a sale from Etsy without paid ads, your fee was only 6.5% fee plus a 3% merchant fee for the transaction, but that you can't avoid that. You're gonna have that on Shopify as well. To only pay 6.5% of your sale price to acquire a customer organically, that is really inexpensive in the marketing world. Now, if you wanted to run Etsy ads, which is an option, it's a way for you to sponsor your listings in the Etsy platform, right? I would suggest that in your sale price that you have a marketing cost percentage built into your sale price so you can run Etsy ads. It's what I recommend, what you should do when you start your business for the first time. But what you'll find is that marketing cost percentage, which is the total amount of money you spend on marketing that month divided by your total revenue for that month, that percentage is going to be a lot lower than what your cost per acquisition would be on, say, Shopify from running ads from Shopify. And again, let me just reiterate, the only exception is if you're only depending on free traffic, then you don't have a marketing cost percentage. But I definitely would not build a business model on the pretense that you're never gonna have to spend money on marketing. I just wouldn't do that. That's just kind of setting yourself up for failure on a high level for business in the long term. So again, full Etsy ads playlist to talk about that. Another thing, like we mentioned, a kind of a con with Etsy is that you don't own your own sales data. So not only do you not own your own sales data, you don't have a lot of control at all, really. So for example, like if you go on YouTube, you'll see a bunch of videos of Etsy shut down my store, right? Or my shop got banned, or Etsy's algorithm changed and it killed all of my sales or something like that. So my point is if you're only depending on Etsy in the long term, you're putting a lot of your eggs in only one basket because you're still at the mercy of another business that really has control over your whole destiny. So they want to change the algorithm. If they want to say that your products aren't allowed anymore, whatever they want to do, they can do it. And that's just something that you have to be okay with, knowing that you're gonna sell on Etsy. Now, I don't think that shouldn't be the reasoning cause of you not doing Etsy, because there's definitely a lot of pros with Etsy. There's a lot of pros. It's just knowing that, you're playing in somebody else's sandbox. So there's gonna be rules for that sandbox, and you have to play the game of their rules. So you have to think in terms of, what does the platform want? Not only what you want, but like, how am I also going to serve Etsy? Play their game at the highest level, basically. Guys, if you've been enjoying this video so far, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I put thousands of hours into this channel of free information trying to help the future-minded, growth mindset entrepreneurs help grow and scale their businesses. So please, if you feel you're getting any value, subscribe down below. And finally, the last kind of con is, again, there's gonna be a cap on your scalability. So with your Etsy ads, you only are allowed to set your budget to $1,000 a day. Now, please watch my other Etsy ad videos, because just because you set your budget to $1,000 a day, it doesn't mean it actually is going to spend $1,000 a day. But if we compare that to Shopify, if you go run Instagram ads or YouTube ads or Google ads and you set your budget to $1,000 a day, it's actually going to spend $1,000 a day. It will eat your budget up fast. So that's where it is also way more expensive. Etsy ads is only showing your products to your customer when they search in, a word that would resemble your product. But not only that, they're only charging you if someone either clicks on the ad, or if you're running something called an offsite ad, when someone actually purchases, they take a percentage of the sale. So they're a lot more budget friendly when it comes to marketing, which again contributes to your cost per acquisition being so low. But there is a cap. So for instance, with one of my brands, we've found that we've pretty much hit a ceiling with our product line, right? Spending more money on ads. Well, we can't spend more money on ads because we already have it set to the max, but it actually won't spend our budget because we're capped on the amount of market share that there is for those products. So what we would have to do on Etsy is basically launch different products with different keywords to attract different types of customer avatars, because we're already at our max basically for the one product line that we have. So we would have to basically go launch different collections that would make sense to fall into our shop to expand our searchability. Now, this is contrary to Shopify because, like I said before, there really is no cap. If you have an ad that is making you money spending $1,000 a day, right? There's no saying that you can't increase that budget to $5,000 a day or $10,000 a day spending, right? As long as it makes sense and it's turning a profit on the back end, you really have the ability to scale vertically a lot higher. Where Etsy is a lot more of a horizontal scaling business, right? If you want to make more money, you need to build competitive products, obviously have good value propositions, but also just have a lot of things to sell. So finally, what do I recommend for you? So like I preference this video with, there's no wrong answer. So if you're someone leaning towards Shopify, ask yourself this question: are you willing to put up more capital? And if you're not willing to put up more capital, are you somebody that inherently is good at creating content on behalf of your products? Another thing that we didn't really touch on for Shopify is influencer marketing, which is another part of your engine. But influencer marketing isn't free, and it's kind of its own engine in itself, right? So for my first brand, we had a whole influencer outreach department where I had one girl reaching out to 100 to 200 influencers a day, basically asking them if they would like free product in exchange for UCG content for them to post it, and so on and so forth. But that is not free, because you either are gonna have to pay influencers plus give them a free product, or you have to give them a free product. And a lot of times people are just gonna take the free product. And we're gonna do the best that we can to try to vet the influencers to make sure that they have a good demographic. But at the end of the day, a lot of people would just take the free product and not even give us back, a video or tag or anything. But that is kind of part of the game of influencer marketing. So it is still contributing it to being more cash intensive or more investment intensive upfront compared to Etsy. Back to, if you're leaning towards Shopify, ask yourself, am I willing to invest the capital and do what it takes to make sure that I can get my ads to profitability and build a competitive store? Or am I somebody that try to go organic content route and make a bunch of content and a bunch of videos and try to go viral? If that's the case, Shopify might be a good route for you. Now, if you're somebody that is really intimidated by those two things, then you may want to consider going with Etsy. And of course, with Etsy, your products have to be a good fit for Etsy. You can't just resell items from China on Etsy. You need to do personalization, you need to be hand making your own items, or you need to be designing your own items with a production partner. So with our current business models, we have kind of a hybrid thing where we make, design, and sell a good, I would say like 60% of our products are made in-house, and we work with contractors that, sew our designs basically. And then the other half of that business is basically what would be called private label. So we have production partners that make our personal design for our products and put our logo on everything and basically, make our designs. So it's kind of a hybrid in that sense, but that's what makes us a good fit for the Etsy platform. So to recap this video, I'm going to explain my personal approach to what I've done with both of my brands when it comes to Etsy versus Shopify. I usually start my brands on Etsy and I get the momentum going and get the proof of concept for the product. Do we get good reviews? Do people like the products? What products do people even like? And I get this Etsy engine running really, really efficiently, where I really don't have to do customer service anymore. I remove myself from product photography, basically mostly everything. We get to a point where we're profitable, we can reinvest that in employees, and we get the business engine where then I have time to focus on Shopify, because I really wouldn't recommend doing both at the same time. If you're starting out for the first time, both engines are completely different engines that have different needs, wants, fears, and goals. And it would almost be like launching two completely different businesses at the same time when you're just trying to learn, right? There's so much learning that happens when you go to market for the first time just with your products alone. So the idea that you're going to be successful on two completely different sales channels out the gates, it's not impossible, but it would just be, it's really overwhelming, right? Because they both have totally different marketing strategies. So like I said, we start with Etsy and basically pull the data and the KPIs from Etsy and then translate that into a Shopify store, and basically then begin building out a Shopify store and then starting a content engine once we make money to reinvest back in Shopify. But the really key thing that we do, we make sure that Etsy is really operating almost by itself. So it's running by itself, but also it's on an engine where it's growing by itself. And the key component for us for growing by itself is that there's new inflow of product launches happening, right? Once you have your Etsy ads maxed out to the max, there's really no other way to grow other than launching and introducing new products and better value propositions in your store, right? So every month we have a consistent inflow happening over here, where Shopify, we now are building out an engine to basically have a consistent inflow of content happening all the time, right? And we take our best sellers from Etsy, and then those are the KPIs or the key performance indicators that tell us these are your best selling items. We're gonna focus on making content for those products to then post on Instagram and TikTok to try to make viral type videos basically. And so you can see how we try to circulate the whole thing into becoming one really big organism. And this is how you would eventually build a household name brand, right? You had the good training ground from Etsy, and then later on you transferred to Shopify, and now you're building a recognizable real brand that is even possibly sellable one day to, say, a different company or a different owner, and you can actually make a real exit from your company. With all that being said, again, this is just me sharing what we have done, what I've done in the past, and there's really no right or wrong answer. It's just what works for you. Overall, guys, thank you so much for staying to the end of this video. Make sure you comment any of your questions down below and subscribe to the channel.